What happens when a tiny Fey sheriff packs ancient relics, cosmic knowledge, and a badge? You get a sprite who can outsmart demons, outfight dragons, and outwalk reality itself. And today, we're taking this pint-sized protector all the way to level 20. Welcome to Ctrl+Alt+Build, where we control the dice, alt the meta, build the legend. I'm Nicholas, your virtual GM. Each episode, we randomize ancestry, background, class, deity, and archetype, then turn that chaos into a level 20 character you'll actually want at your table. Today's twisted creation, Codex entry number 4, the Pixie Marshal. Sometimes the dice bless us with synergy. Other times, they challenge us to dig deep and find fun in the chaos. This time, the dice rolled up a fantastical combo, a Sprite Thaumaturge with the deputy background and devotion to Falanya, the warrior god of femininity, fights, and fashion, topping it off with an archetype dedication in Horizon Walker. At first glance, sprites, law enforcement, and bodybuilding fashionista divinity is a odd combination, but that's exactly the kind of chaos we live for here at Ctrl+Alt+Build. Before we move forward, a quick note. If your table isn't set in Galarian, just swap in the closest alternative for specific names and deities. Your GM will thank you for the world building boost. The Sprite Ancestry gives us tiny, whimsical, wilderness Tinkerbell energy that doesn't exactly scream Thaumaturge. The deputy background places our character in the heart of frontier justice, helping keep remote towns safe. And then there's Falanya. Why is our tiny, cute little house on the prairie deputy worshipping a goddess all about femininity, martial training, and an odd obsession with rings? Well, that's the kind of storytelling question that shapes the build. This time, we do have an archetype to throw into the mix, Horizon Walker, a master of traveling through specific terrain, leaving us with a narrative that begs to be fleshed out. A prankster who uses magical artifacts and knowledge to bring creatures to their knees. Now let's build the legend. At level 1, we are putting the foundation of the character together. Sprites are exuberant and curious people with a connection to the Fey realm, who are most often tiny fairies with vastly varying features based on their heritage, and while most eventually grow wings, all are very drawn to magic. Mechanically, a sprite has 6 hit points, is tiny sized, with a base speed of 20 feet, they have low light vision, and the magical strikes feature, which causes all of our strikes to be magical in nature. Our sprite has the Dromar heritage, which gives us some ancestral traits of orcs. This gives us access to Dromar and orc feats in addition to sprite. This would grant us low light vision if we didn't already have it. We are going to start out with some impressive proficiencies, the most notable of these being expert in perception, fortitude, and will, along with 11 other skills with a trained proficiency. Our ancestry, background, and class all provide us with feats here, them being Orc Sight, Experience Tracker, Root to Life, and Dubious Knowledge. Our class does give us the core identity of this character. The Thaumaturge is a ultimate jack of all mysteries, part monster hunter, part relic expert, and part battlefield tactician. What sets them apart isn't flashy spells or brute force, but the uncanny ability to notice what others miss and use it to turn the tide. Whether it's a silver coin blessed under a blood moon or an old dagger carved with forgotten runes, a Thaumaturge knows how to make it matter. They're constantly collecting oddities, learning obscure lore, and using quick thinking to expose the flaw in any foe, be it undead, fiend, or even dragon. Their signature move is exploiting weaknesses, literally. With a keen eye and a relic always in hand, they can identify what hurts most and hit where it counts, often bypassing the need for brute strength or high magic. It's less about overwhelming power and more about being prepared. A toolbox adventurer whose strength lies in adaptability, intuition, and sheer breadth of their knowledge. Our Thaumaturge's first implement in Esoterica is the weapon. Ours will be a longsword, and the innate benefits from the weapon implement. This is going to allow us to use the reaction implement's interruption, which when the target we are exploiting does something, we get to attempt to smack them with our sword, deal some damage, and potentially disrupt the action itself. We do have medium and light armor proficiencies, and since our size is tiny, which means being able to actually hit someone with our longsword, we will need to be in the same space as them. It would probably be a good idea to pick one out for yourself. Lastly, let's go over what our attribute scores look like starting out. Strength will be at a +1 from boost from ancestry and level, with our flaw taken into account. Dex comes in at a +3 from ancestry, background, and level boost. Con sits at +1 from level boost. Intelligence sits at +1 from ancestry. Wisdom is at a flat 0. And in the rear is charisma, with a +3 from background, class, and level boost. At levels 2, 3, and 4, we are going to continue setting the foundation of the build in place. Horizon Walker comes online at 2nd level, and it really pushes us towards a place of being a master of the frontiers, which we reinforce with the skill feats terrain, expertise, and additional lore, both focused on mountains. While exploration is on lockdown, combat doesn't fall behind either thanks to Instructive Strike, because when you make something bleed, suddenly all that obscure lore just clicks, because it's easier to remember something after you've made it bleed, right? 5th level is where the build really starts to come online. As an expert in 3 different lore skills, diplomacy and survival, we've really begun to embody that terrain-knowing deputy who carries around weird stuff, especially since we get our 2nd implement here, the amulet. The amulet lets us use our reaction for a defensive benefit, providing resistance to the triggering damage to us and our close, and I mean proximity, not personal, allies. Our connection to the Fey world has also given us the ability to talk with sleeping spirits that reside within all objects. So if you really want to know who got into the cookie jar, you can just ask the cookie jar. We also get our next increases to attribute, with us getting a +1 to strength, dex, intelligence, and charisma. As we progress through levels 6, 7, and 8, we learn a few new tricks. With the feats Glad Hand, Hobnobber, and Group Impression, our ability to interact with people in a nice civilized manner has greatly improved. We are always scouting now, thanks to Perpetual Scout, and now even when we miss with our weapon implement, we still get to tack on a little bit of damage. By levels 9 through 11, our Pixie Marshal has cleaned up the boondocks, just in time for the evil mastermind's grand scheme to kick into high gear. Master proficiencies in diplomacy, survival, nature, and 3 different lores make us the Horizon Walker Scout Extraordinaire, especially since we tacked on the incredible Scout feat. Fey Magic and Magical Adaptation give us a growing toolkit of spells. Spider Climb and Water Breathing come in especially handy when you're chasing fugitives across cliffs and rivers. And yes, we are still making Felania proud, hitting the gym with +1 boosts to Strength, Constitution, and Wisdom, and flexing a partial boost to Charisma. By the end of level 11, our half-orc Pixie has fully stepped into the spotlight, starring in a wild spaghetti western directed by the Feywild with a dash of Peter Pan flair. The mountains don't talk, but they remember. And if you listen close, between the wind and the echoes, you might hear a story whispered on the edge of a knife. They say there's a badge out there, worn by something small enough to ride in your pocket, but with eyes that see straight through a man's lies. A sprite. No wings, no flash. Just boots, grit, and a stare that makes devils flinch. They walk the old roads where lawmen get buried, and unmarked graves, and justice is usually spelled with a shovel. Started out a curiosity, a half-orc Pixie with a badge too big for their chest, hauling around relics like souvenirs from forgotten gods. Carrying the favor of a divine bodybuilding coach who blesses fashion and fistfights in equal measure. On paper, it looked like a joke. Then they started solving problems, the kind that don't fit nice in a wanted poster. By level 11, they've become a ghost story with a badge. They know the terrain like it owes them money, talking circles around tavern toughs, and if things get ugly, they've got a longsword that hums with the weight of old blood and older secrets. People don't laugh anymore, they listen. The town sleeps easier now. Bandits vanish, cultists go quiet. But justice the strange never stays simple, and it never stays still. It could end here. Wouldn't be a bad place to hang up the badge and call the story done. But if it doesn't, let's just see how deep the rabbit hole really goes. As we step into high tier play, levels 12 through 14 give our Frontier Law Mage a serious glow up. We invest in some sturdy new tools. Thaumaturge's Zemain grants us our own private mystical hideaway, perfect for setting traps, preparing rituals, and just putting our tiny boots up. Add face skin into the mix, and we've got extra HP and regeneration to stay standing when things get dicey. The trade-off? A weakness to cold iron, but let's be honest, if your villain's swinging cold iron, you've probably already made them sweat. Our mountain expertise finally pays off in a big way. We can now roll initiative using our lore skills instead of perception as long as we're in mountainous terrain. When danger comes knocking, we don't just see it, we understand it. With legendary proficiency and will saves now under our belt, we are not just physically sturdy, we're mentally fortified. All that time meditating in alpine caves and arguing with cursed artifacts is finally starting to pay off. We're well on our way to being the tiniest version of Eastwood there is. 15 through 17 is when the Pixie Marshal becomes a force of nature. We now boast master or legendary proficiency in 9 different skills or saving throws, including survival, diplomacy, and lore. That's not just versatility, it's dominance. And speaking of presence, our third implement arrives, the Regalia. This glowing badge of office doesn't just sparkle, it radiates authority. Allies near us gain a +1 status bonus to our marked targets, and fear effects bounce off us like pebbles off plate. We finally take to the skies, not with gossamer wings, but with magical lift from our thaumaturgic arsenal. With flight comes freedom, and with freedom comes responsibility. So naturally, we pick up the legendary guide feat because legendary survivalists just didn't go far enough. Our weapon implement hits its apex too. Now a regular hit is enough to interrupt enemy actions, no critical needed. That's right, hit them hard, shut them down. And to make our bodybuilding goddess Felania proud, we pump up our stats again, +1 to strength, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Big brain, big biceps, tiny boots. And just in case the worst happens, like falling in battle or drowning in a tablespoon of soup, we unlock Along the Deep River. Upon death, we ascend into a ball of light, and a week later we reincarnate in a random heritage. Might be less green next time, but we'll still be just as deadly. Just maybe don't make this an annual habit. We've reached the top of the mountain, both figuratively and literally. At levels 18 through 20, we crank the power up one last time. Attribute boost hits again, +1 to Constitution, Intelligence, and Wisdom, with a partial boost to Charisma. Our social and mystical magnetism is now undeniable. Our longsword, it's no longer a weapon, it's a statement. With the apex of our weapon implement, we can now hurl our blade like a thunderbolt, striking every foe within 30 feet, one after another, without stacking up attack penalties until the whole barrage ends. It's not just a fight, it's a reckoning. Our skill mastery peaks with Legendary Professional, Legendary Negotiation, and Biographical Eye. We can talk to anyone, know where they've been, and convince them we've always been 3 steps ahead, because we have. And remember that cozy little Thaumaturge's Desmine from earlier? It's now a 10,000 square foot magical manor complete with unseen servants, unlimited food, magical guardians, and a peace field. Think Resplendent Mansion meets Peaceful Bubble. Because what self-respecting Sprite Marshal doesn't need a luxury extra-dimensional compound tucked into the side of a mountain? The mountains have grown quieter. Not safe, not tame, but quieter. They say it's because of her, the badge, the blade, the stories that follow like dust on the wind. You don't see her coming, not until it's far too late. No wings, no fairy glow, just a pair of boots, a long shadow, and a stare that could outlast the cold. From levels 12 through 20, the Pixie Marshal stops being a rumor and becomes a reckoning. Her Thaumaturge's Desmine isn't just a hideaway. It's a sanctified shelter cut from the world's wild edges. In it, she heals, regains her strength, and prepares for the next ride into chaos. With fey skin, blades bounce, bruises fade, and even the cruelest wounds fail to linger. Cold iron may still bite, but you'll need to catch her first. She's no longer reacting to threats, she's anticipating them. The whispers of forgotten lore become her sixth sense. In the mountains, she doesn't just move, she belongs. Legendary will keeps her mind sharp through illusions, fear, and doubt. She's been broken, nearly buried, and yet still walks tall, always watching. At 15, the Marshal's Regalia comes online, part symbol, part storm. Her allies move with more certainty, their fear tempered by her presence. Her enemies hesitate, and in that moment, she strikes. Flight conjured not from fey blood, but from thaumaturgic might, makes her something like a myth, gliding over ridgelines, never quite touching the earth. Her weapon, once a simple longsword, now dances across battlefields. She can interrupt any foe's momentum with a strike, crit or not, and should death finally catch her, Along the Deep River ensures the story doesn't end. Her body may fall, but her soul flows forward, returning, reshaped, reborn, and ready to ride again. By the time she reaches level 20, her legend has outpaced her. They call her the Mountain Shadow, the law that never sleeps. Her long sword cleaves through crowd with a flick of the wrist. She can outtalk nobles, outthink devils, and outlasts anything dumb enough to stand in her way. That doesn't mean 10,000 square feet of magical frontier grandeur. Guardians at the gates, feasts on the table, and peace like walls to stone. This is the end of the trail. Justice rides easy. The badge rests heavy, and her story becomes one with the wind. And that brings us to the end of the Pixie Marshal, a sprite orc blend of grit, grace, and good old frontier justice. From humble beginnings as a wandering deputy with a bag full of oddities and way too much lore, she's grown into a legendary survivalist, a fearsome enforcer, and a guiding light in the darkest corners of the wild. With diplomacy in one hand, steel in the other, and a heart bound to the land, she is ready to negotiate a peace as she is to cut down the wicked. Mechanically, this build plays like a Swiss army knife in the shape of a fairy. You're not the fastest damage dealer, but your versatile, control, and utility are unmatched. You'll constantly exploit enemy weaknesses, buff allies, and use battlefield knowledge to shift the tide in battle. Exploration and social interaction feels like your home turf, and even in combat, you're always contributing, whether it's disrupting enemy actions, resisting fear, or boosting your party's targeting. It's a satisfying blend of tactical depth and flavorful decision-making. This build walks the line between theme and function, perfect for players who love social play, skill challenge, and moments where cunning and charisma hit just as hard as the longsword. She's an ideal centerpiece for a wilderness campaign or a strange lawbringer keeping order in places too far for the city watch to reach. So whether you're chasing bandits through the peaks, parleying with talking trees, or standing alone against a tide of rising evil, the Pixie Marshal will always answer the call. At Ctrl+Alt+Build, we don't ignore the dice, we embrace them. We don't reject weird combos, we celebrate them. The builds here are made to surprise your GM, delight your table, and inspire new stories that only your group could tell. If this video gave you ideas, or even just made you laugh, drop a like, hit subscribe, and tell me how you'd run the Pixie Marshal at your table. Let's talk in the comments. If you'd like to experience the story of another legend, click that video over there and make sure to subscribe to catch the rest of the future legends to come. Until next time, control the dice, alt the meta, build the legend. I've been Nicholas, your virtual GM. Thanks for watching.